So this week I've been making a series of videos about the Rugby Players of the Year. I've put it into different categories. So far we've had the Rugby Player of the Year in the forwards, we've had the Rugby Player of the Year in the backs, and in today's video I'm going to have the Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward, because the bench plays such a big part of our game today. So check it out in this video. Hello and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan that lives here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. I would love you to stick around, so hit that little subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to drop your comments, because this channel is all about giving our own opinions about what's going on in the world of rugby. If you're a regular visitor to my channel, thanks very much for coming back. I've got some news for you today. I've got 2 more YouTube channels on the go now, and you can check those out. I've put the links to in the description of this particular video. One of them is called Sports World with Mark, where I talk about all kinds of different sports events that are going on across the world at the moment, giving my reviews, opinions and analysis of those particular topics. The other channel is called Age is No Barrier, and it's basically a video documentary journey of my running career at the moment as an ultra trail runner here in Mexico. So if you're interested in a bit of running and you're an old geezer like me, then you might want to head over to that channel and check out what I'm doing. I've got a couple of interesting challenges going on at the moment. Okay, so let's get into rugby. That's what this is all about. In this video I'm going to talk about those substitute forwards that come on during these important games, and I'm in particular looking at the Rugby World Cup this year and those amazing benches that we saw across from various teams. So I've come up with 9 players that I'm nominating to be the Rugby Player Substitute Forward of the Year, and I want to see what your opinion is to these 9 players. Now, if you've been watching my videos prior to the Rugby World Cup, I talked a lot about what the importance of the bench was going to be throughout the Rugby World Cup, in my opinion. And that seemed to be the case. The bench was very, very important in a lot of the major games in the Rugby World Cup. And as a result of that, we got to see some really, really good players coming in off the bench. And it was strategically used by a lot of coaches, wasn't it, throughout the Rugby World Cup. So on my list of forwards that I'm nominating to be the Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward, the first 3 are from South Africa. No surprise there with the bomb squad in place, but I thought that these 3 probably stood out from the rest of the South Africans on the bench, and they really added something significant to those big games that South Africa won in the knockout stages of this year's Rugby World Cup. Now, the first player I have on my list for substitute forward of the year is RG Snyman. Yes, the big Viking from South Africa. I thought he was outstanding in the Rugby World Cup. He did so much good when he came on the field, not only in the set pieces, but some of those offloads in the running opportunities that he had, or where he created, were absolutely outstanding. And just his size and his power were able to propel that South African team forward, and he really had a dramatic impact when he came on the field. So it was a fantastic performance, I thought, from RG Snyman throughout the Rugby World Cup, and he's definitely on my list. Now, the next on my list, another South African from their contingent of the bomb squad, and it's Kwagga Smith, who I thought was outstanding again during the Rugby World Cup. This guy is such a versatile player. He can play in many different positions, and we saw the impact he had when he came on against some of those top teams in the knockout stage. And what I liked about Kwagga Smith's play was his ability to get in there and be so disruptive at the breakdown. And for a guy of his size, he's not as huge as some of these other guys. He's able to use his speed and his precision as his secret weapon. So Kwagga Smith makes my list. I thought he was outstanding as a substitute forward coming on for the Springboks during the Rugby World Cup. And there we go. He's the next one on the list. Okay, the third South African on my list to be nominated for substitute forward of the year this year is that man, that giant of a man that loves to eat a lot of cake, and his name, of course, is Ox Nché. And Ox had a fantastic Rugby World Cup. We'll remember that scrum, won't we, against England? He was absolutely fantastic. And you know, for a man of his size and let's say his physical prowess and his diet and nutrition program, he really does a lot of damage when he comes on. But he stood out for me as one of the outstanding substitutes in this Rugby World Cup, and again was a pivotal factor in the South African team going on to become world champions in 2023. So Oxen Che, fantastic performance from him in this year's Rugby World Cup. Rightio, the next on my list comes from England, and it's Theo Dan. I thought he had a fantastic performance in the Rugby World Cup as a substitute coming on for that English Roses team, and he was absolutely fantastic in different parts of the play, particularly against Argentina, I thought. So Theo Dan makes my list, and of course representing England in this nomination final for the Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward. Great performances by Theo. Next one on my list is a French player, and his name's Macalou, and what a fantastic player he is, Macalou. So athletic, so fast, and in some of those games for France when he came on, he made a significant difference. His ability, he could play on the wing, this guy, let's face it. He's got speed to burn, that's for sure, but it's his power and his agility, his movement off his different side steps that he's got as well was something we saw during this year's Rugby World Cup. So Macalou makes my list for Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward, and he's from France. Now the next guy might have gone under the radar for a lot of you in this year's Rugby World Cup as a substitute that came on that made a difference for his nation. His nation is Samoa, and his name is Stephen Luatua. And Stephen came on for different games for Samoa and really had an impact, I thought. And again, he's one of these versatile players. He's really good being a flanker, or he does very well at number 8 as well. He also can play in the lock position. So Stephen Luatua gets a nod from me as far as getting on my list of Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward. Great performance from him throughout this year's Rugby World Cup. Next on my list is Dane Coles from New Zealand, the All Blacks. Yes, and I thought Coles had a really good Rugby World Cup. He was a little bit unfortunate not to be a starter in the 15, I thought, in different games in this year's Rugby World Cup. But when he did come on, he showed that he hadn't lost any of that speed and agility that he uses to his advantage. Scored a couple of really good tries for the All Blacks, and was Mr. Present around the field, also making sure that that forward dynamic that the All Blacks had with Ethan de Groot and Tyrell Lomax was well and truly in place. So a great performance for Dane Coles throughout this year's Rugby World Cup. He gets a nod for me as being a nominee for Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward. Let me know what you think about Dane Coles' performance. Continuing to run through my list of nominations in Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward list. And the next one on my list comes from South America, from that great country of Argentina, just down the road a few thousand kilometers from me here. And it's that talisman that came on to really make a difference with over 100 caps, and I'm talking about, of course, Augustine Creevy. Creevy had a very, very good World Cup, I thought. He's in the twilight years of his career, but he really made a difference when he came on for Argentina in a number of different areas. First of all, his leadership skills. He was able to unite that combination of Argentina, and I thought with him and Sanchez coming on late in the game for Argentina, they were really able to make a difference. So Augustine Creevy makes my list of nominations for Rugby Player of the Year substitute forward. Let me know what you think about that one. Now the last one on my list for substitute forwards is another Englishman, and his name is Joe Marler. And despite the haircut and the antics sometime from Marler, I thought he played really, really well when he came on for England throughout this Rugby World Cup. He probably had his best game against South Africa on that very torrid day for the English forwards, and it was an outstanding performance. But I did see Marler play very well in other games for England throughout the Rugby World Cup, coming on as a substitute prop. So Joe Marler makes up my list for the Rugby Player of the Year substitute forwards, and it's from this group of players that I am going to pick my final selection for the Player of the Year. Now, having a look through the list in its entirety, any of your favourites there, let me know in the comments. And if I've missed somebody from the substitute forward bench across the Rugby World Cup this year that deserves, in your mind, to be on this list, let me know in the comments. I'll be really interested to read that. As I've said in my previous videos about Rugby Players of the Year, there's been two main criteria that I've been looking at. The first one is the individual brilliance that this particular person brought to the Rugby World Cup this year, so their own outstanding performance across the different games that they played. The second criteria I've gone in for is looking at the impact they had for their overall team and their nation. Did they help their nation actually win a game, perhaps win a very vital game? So that's kind of what I've used as a benchmark in my selection process here for these nominees. And I'm now going to let you know who I've selected as my Rugby Player of the Year as a substitute forward. And it goes to none other than the big Viking, R.G. Schneemann from South Africa. He was absolutely outstanding in my mind in this year's Rugby World Cup. He's really growing as a player, both physically and literally on the field. I think he's going to be outstanding in the next few years, and a force to be reckoned with when South Africa get to Australia in 2027, if he can stay healthy and focused until then. So R.G. Schneemann wins my substitute forward of the year. Let me know in the comments what you think about this particular selection. And so far in my list of players for Rugby Player of the Year, we've had the backs, the forwards, the substitute forwards, and crikey moly, they've all been South African. So there we go. Bit of a surprise on that one. Even surprised me, that one, when I had a look at it this morning as well. We've got one more to go in this list, and that's going to be the substitute back. That's coming up in a video tomorrow, so make sure you stick around and have a look for that. Best way to do that, of course, is hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments whether or not you think I got my nominees right for this list, and whether or not you think I selected the right player as the substitute forward of the year. Okay, that's it for this video. I'm going to be back again, as I said, tomorrow with my final video in this series. Until then, stay safe, stay well, everybody. Wishing you all the best for the weekend ahead. And until then, it's time to say adios from Mexico. Bye for now.